Hi, everyone. Welcome to one more episode of Ask Dr. Joe. I'm Jennifer Finch, Public Information Officer for Weld County, Colorado, and I'm joined by Dr. Joe Sertich, who is the Curator of Dinosaurs at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Dr. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for making time. We always appreciate it. And I know our viewers on social media and our website, they really enjoy this. I've gotten a lot of good comments. People of all ages love hearing the answers to the questions that are being asked. And we have a lot of questions today. But before we do that, why don't you give us a little update, if there is much of an update, on what you've been doing with Pops? We see him there behind you there. How's he
Yeah,
doing?
I'm sitting here with Pops right now. There's not a lot of new updates on Pops. The prep is still done. We've gone through and gotten it all ready to go. And we're just waiting for final approval to take it on a road trip. Its next step, which is to take it out to Western Colorado, where we will have it molded and cast and reconstructed. So there'll be a full reconstructed skull of Pops, hopefully by later this summer or early fall.
That's going to be so great. I know I've had a lot of people here locally ask, "Where's Pops? Can I see him?" Which means the word is getting out more to people who live here who didn't even know we had this fossil. So it's going to be a great asset to have it come back and people can enjoy it. The cast is going to be wonderful because we can take that out into the community. So a lot of people are excited about that. So thank you for doing that. And yeah, just bundle them up safely as you take them over and send pictures on the trip.
We'll keep him safe.
Okay. Um, why don't we dive into some questions? We got quite a few questions from three people actually who are very much interested in what's going on. And so I think since there's not a lot of update on pop stuff, he's just kind of waiting to get packaged up and on to the next page. Why don't we dive into some good questions from some of our followers? This comes in from email from Jack Prawl, and he's got several. So we'll just piece them apart here because I think you'll be able to just knock them off for us real fast. The first question is, what are the beaks of Triceratops used for?
Well, so that's a great question. We don't know for sure how the beaks are used. They're for sure used for feeding. So we know that the beak, the really tough, you see behind me here, the tough nose beak there, is used probably for clipping tough vegetation. And we know that based on the wear on the teeth. But it could also be used for other purposes. So the beaks could also have been used for combat, for protection. They would have been very sharp, a lot like a bird's beak. And we know that because of the texture of the bone. It shows us that it was probably covered with what's called a keratin sheath, so kind of like your fingernails or the beak of a bird, so that softer tissue. And that would have extended out and made the beak probably very sharp along the edge.
Very interesting. His next question is, what dinosaurs lived with Triceratops?
So the other dinosaurs that lived alongside Pops include T-Rex, so the big carnivore, and also duckbill dinosaurs. So we know from some of the deposits and sites near where Pops was collected that there was a duckbill dinosaur called Edmontosaurus. There were also smaller plant-eating dinosaurs called Thescelosaurus. Those are two-legged, probably about the size of a small horse or a pony. And then there was probably armored dinosaurs like Denversaurus and dome-headed dinosaurs like Pachycephalosaurus, all living in this ecosystem alongside things like turtles and crocodiles and plants that you would see around you today, so similar types of trees.
Interesting. As you're speaking, I'm just thinking about captioning the video, which we've done with each of these, and I'm just thinking I got to figure out how to spell that. All right. Do we know the sexual dimorphism within Triceratops?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that paleontologists have been interested in for decades, really centuries. Are there indicators of dimorphism? So if you think about animals alive today, mostly mammals, there's a difference between males and females. So if you think of a deer or an elk, the males typically get those really big, showy antlers, and the females don't have those big display structures. For horned dinosaurs, we don't see a major difference, at least given the population sizes. So given the number of fossils that we have of each type of horned dinosaur, they're all very consistent. And so what that means is maybe they were using these structures more for signaling or display than for sexual dimorphism, so rather than sexually selected.
Great, thank you. This one is an interesting question, and I've actually had a couple people ask me when I've been down at the museum taking friends or family down to the museum, what is the difference between tiny and pops? Like beyond just that they're different.
Yeah, so Pops is from a much older layer of rock called the Laramie Formation. Uh, Pops would be about 2 million years older than Tiny, and they're completely different genera. So Pops is a Triceratops, or maybe even something older like an Eotriceratops, and Tiny is a Taurosaurus. So the main differences are in the size of the skull and the shape of the skull. So there are features like the frill, so the big shield behind the head, that are quite short and kind of curled forward on Pops, whereas on Tiny, the Taurosaurus, it's a big, round, flat billboard with these big windows through the bone. So it would have been a very different shaped frill.
Very interesting. And so exciting that they're both found right here along the Front Range.
Yeah, there are tons of these horned dinosaurs. We also have Triceratops from Highlands Ranch, and there's one from up north near where Pops came out from Brighton. So we have horned dinosaurs all around the Denver metro area, all the way up into northern Colorado.
So interesting. This question actually dovetails into a question that question slash comment that was shared with me when I was giving an update about Pops, and it has to do about the environment where Pops would have lived. And I know we've had pictures that Andre has created about Pops. We haven't shared the final version yet, but you guys are going to love it. It's amazing. But we've shared some of the earlier stages of the painting, and I had someone come up and say, well, that's not really what it looked like here. And then Jack has also asked, what was that environment like? So can you walk us through the fact that how you work with someone like a paleoartist like Andre, and how do you determine what kinds of plants and vegetation and what the landscape would have looked like during the time of whatever specimen you're creating the art for?
Yeah, so the only clues that we have come from the rocks themselves. So all the rocks that entomb these fossils, like Pops, there's little bits of information, and some of that shows us how far away the mountains would have been. So this is a time when the early Rocky Mountains were forming, but they would have been way off to the west and much smaller than they are today. So even farther off than the current Rocky Mountains are from modern day Brigsdale, Colorado. And we can look at the size of grains, so the grain size of the sand that entombed Pops. That gives us an indicator of how far the grains have traveled, whether they're rounded. And they tell us how fast the water was moving. So there are other features in the sediment that can show us the water depth, the water speed. And then the fossils themselves tell us a lot. So not only the plants, which are really great for reconstructing what the trees and ferns and other bits of vegetation look like, but there are other indicators from fossils. So the invertebrates can tell us how fast the water was moving, or what the chemical conditions of the water were like. Was it saline? Was it near the ocean? Was it slow moving and kind of stagnant? So looking at things like snails and clams can tell us a lot about the local environment. And all of those little bits of information are what we use to work with a paleo artist like Andre Tuchin to reconstruct the landscape. So we talk about how far the mountains would be and what the landscape would have looked like at that particular spot on the ancient globe from 68, 69 million years ago.
Nice. Thank you so much for explaining that. I'm gonna, Here goes the light again. I'm gonna remember that the next time somebody challenges that, because I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that what we're seeing is they're fairly confident that that's what it looked like here. So that's very nice to know. Um, this is an interesting question. Is there evidence of Triceratops jousting like deer do?
So we don't have any great direct evidence of that jousting behavior. We would expect, at least in some cases, there could be damage to the bones, small fractures or breaks that are healed, but we haven't seen that yet in a lot of dinosaurs, horned dinosaurs. But scientists have gone and looked at how their skulls would fit together, and those horns would lock together and allow them to basically wrestle and test each other's strength. And so that's one hypothesis, that they're not necessarily ramming into each other like you would see with bighorn sheep, but that they're coming together, locking together, and then grappling is one major hypothesis for how they use those horns. That includes the cheek horns and the nose horns. So those all kind of fit together and lock together. so that they can test each other's strength.
That would be something to see for sure. Jack's last question, which is an unusual one. What would Triceratops steak taste like?
Oh, that's a great question. So we know that horned dinosaurs, just like all dinosaurs, are related to birds and crocodiles, and we know that alligator tastes like chicken, and birds, obviously, some of them taste like chicken or beef. So I would guess that a Triceratops would be kind of a cross between chicken and beef.
I was going to reply, like, of course they taste like chicken. Everything tastes like chicken, right?
Yeah, but it has to taste like beef because it's from Weld County, and that's Weld County's most
Absolutely.
famous meat product.
Absolutely. Thanks for that plug. Our ag community will appreciate that. We like our beef here. Let's move on here. I've got some emailed questions from Mackenzie Boyd. And the first question is, why did Triceratops have ridges on the frill?
So the different grooves and ridges on the surface of the frill are indicators of where blood vessels and nerves would have gone. So the frill was likely covered with either really tough skin, and some Triceratops specimens show patterns of skin that are stuck to the frill, and you can see that on Andre's reconstruction behind Jennifer there. Those big plates or those big kind of polygons of keratin. And so those blood vessels were running underneath that to supply that tissue and allow it to continue to grow. And then along the edge, it has those horns, those small little hornlets, and those were probably for display. So those were showy. The number of them is pretty consistent between different species, and so those were important display structures.
Great. So these questions, the next ones that Mackenzie has, aren't necessarily Triceratops specific, but I'm sure there are things that other people have wondered about dinosaurs. And the first one, which I think is a great question, why are the arms of a T-Rex so short?
That's a great question. It's one that several paleontologists that I know right now are working on. And what's really difficult to do is understand the exact function of certain structures. So we know that legs are used for walking, we know that arms are used for grasping or pushing. But T-Rex and other tyrannosaurs are really unique in that they've reduced the forelimb, but the muscle scars and other parts of the anatomy of the bones show that they're still used. So they have really large muscle attachments, really well-developed joints, and so we know that they're using them for something that's quite strong. They're about the size of a human's arm, but when you think about what a giant animal the size of an elephant is doing with human arms, it's hard to infer that. And so that's the idea of inferring behavior from the fossil record, which is really difficult to do.
We may never know, right?
We may never know unless we catch one in the act.
There you
Possibly.
go. There you go. The next question is, what dinosaur was closest in height to man,
To
to a human?
to a human, Pops would have been about the size, at least the height at its shoulder of a human. So Pops would have stood about 6 or 7 feet tall. There are several other dinosaurs, like the Thescelosaurus that I mentioned earlier, that would have stood about 6 feet tall. But you have to remember, so they're standing 6 feet tall, but they're 20 feet long or 15 feet long. So they have those long tails, and so it's a really different shape. But they would have been about the height of a human.
Interesting. Do we know what dinosaur had the longest lifespan?
We don't yet. So there's a lot of work being done on histology, and so that's cutting bones and looking at growth. And it's still being done on many different groups of dinosaurs. We know that some of the long-necked sauropod dinosaurs that lived here in the Rocky Mountain West in the Jurassic and came back again at the end of the Cretaceous, those lived quite a long time. T-Rex didn't live that long. About 30 years is the oldest T-Rex we know. So not a really old animal. And we're doing the work right now on Pops. And so the indicators show that Pops was very mature, getting to almost old age based on the rings or the patterns of growth in the bone. But even Pops wasn't super old, somewhere in the range of 10 to 20 years old. And that was an old Triceratops.
Wow, that's very interesting. All right, this is an important question, Dr. Joe, and one that I want you to think through before you answer. But Mackenzie would like to know, what dinosaur would you ride into battle?
Oh, well, it would have to be probably Taurosaurus because it has that huge shield you can hide behind, and then the big horns on the front. So Pops would be great, but the shield, the frill behind the head isn't as big as a Taurosaurus. So I would ride on a Taurosaurus.
You have more coverage there.
Yeah, more
Yeah,
protection up front.
makes sense. Makes sense. Great. We have two more questions. These came in from Facebook, and they are from Jacob Hascarl. I think
Uh-huh.
I said that right, I hope. And his first question is, how complete is the Pops specimen?
So Pops is a lot more complete than we originally thought it was. So it's a beautiful skull that you see behind me. We also, as we cleaned through the fragments, found most of the left lower jaw. So we have most of the left side of its lower jaw. And we've also been able to find pieces of its ribs, its pelvis, and even chunks of some of its limb bones. So we think that there could be more at the site. So we're hoping to go back and visit and see if we can find more evidence of the body of Pops. But for now, it's mostly a skull and jaw with fragments of the rest of the skeleton.
Jacob's also asking, what is Pop's museum designation?
So the museum designation, the catalog number hasn't been formally assigned to Pops yet, but it is a DMNH, so Denver Museum of Natural History was what we used to be called, number. So DMNH EPV, and it'll be 130 something thousand will be the official number for Pops. But I don't have it yet.
And just, Jacob, so that you know, we were talking before we started recording. This is an interesting process that the county and the museum are going through because this fossil came out of the ground, private ownership into county ownership. So it's never had an official number before. And so this is what's great about this partnership with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science is Dr. Joe and his team there have worked with the county and with our attorney and their attorneys and working with the state on making it so that Pops can have that number. He can be studied by Dr. Joe and the museum, and they can find out more about him. And then the fossil comes back to Weld County to be displayed, which is one of the I can't think of the word, but it's in the resolution of one of the things that needs to happen. And so everyone's just been fantastic in making sure that we can weave through government processes to make sure that that all can happen. And it's been working extremely well right now, and it's been just a great partnership with everyone. But it's unusual, right? You haven't really had to jump through these, I'll call them hoops. You haven't had to jump through these hoops before because I think we're probably one of the very few counties that have a fossil that's always just been in private or local ownership. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think it's really important, personally, that these fossils that were found in places outside of Denver, and they're part of a community, stay in that community, so that people who live there have a connection to their place, the place that they live now, and what it used to be like. So I think it's really important that pops go back up to Weld County, so that people who live nearby can go and see it and see what lived in their backyards 68, 69 million years ago.
I agree. And I think that was, well, I know that that was Sonny Mapelli's intent. He was the gentleman who owned the land north of Briggsville where Pops was found. And I've had the pleasure to get to know his daughters, Jerry and Terry, and we've had numerous conversations. And that's exactly why Sonny donated that to Fossil to Weld County, was so that he wanted people to be able to appreciate what was here and learn more about their history. And he was a big fan of education, which is another reason why I think this process has been so fantastic because um, we are educating so many people. And thanks to Dr. Joe and his team and all the people that he's working with that we're getting to know. And yes, we were hoping that this would be a great educational opportunity locally, but what's been a fantastic surprise is this has actually gone global for us. And that has just been amazing as well. That brings us to one other update I want to share with you. If you're not following Pops on social media, this will be a surprise to you. But we are running a Pops art contest, and there's information on our social media. You can find it on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Just look at Pops the Triceratops or Pops Triceratops, and you'll find it. Or easier, go to www.discoverweld.com. There's a whole section for Pops there. You can see the information about the art contest. The deadline for that art contest was going to be Friday, July 2nd. And we had something very exciting happen yesterday. Dr. Joe and the museum team went down to a TV station in Denver to do a story, work with them on an interview and story, presumably about pops, maybe some other exciting things that are happening at the museum. Through the course of that conversation, Channel 2, which is the station, became interested in the contest and asked if that deadline could be extended because they wanted to run the story and help promote the contest, which I think is fantastic. So the deadline will now be July 9th, which is next Friday. And as part of that whole package deal, we're excited to announce one more surprise judge to our team, and that will be she's the anchor for Channel 2's Daybreak News, and her name is Katie Orth. And she was the one who interviewed you, so it's her story. She's the one who really wanted to help promote this, and so she's going to join us in the judging, and she's really excited to do that as well. So I want to thank you guys for making those contacts and doing that story and helping get the word out about Pops the Triceratops.
I'm excited to see all the entries that have come in.
They're beautiful. I'm blown away, and I have to tell you, I know it'll probably sound corny, but this whole project has just been really exciting and fun. And I don't know if you can see it. You can see dinosaurs up here. You can see I found a Triceratops necklace. I mean, dinosaurs were not my thing, but it's just been fun. And now I see them everywhere, and people are buying them and putting them in my office. But the dinosaur family that has been built up around Pops and the interest, and I know that community existed before Pops came on the scene, but it's been really fun to engage with people on social media. It's been fun. Every time I check the Pops email box and see an entry for the art contest, I'm amazed at what these artists are doing, and I can't wait for you guys to see them because they're beautiful. They're all beautiful, and I'm just glad I'm not judging because they're all fantastic. So I'm really excited to do that. As far as judging goes, we will keep you guys in the loop. Obviously, we have Dr. Joe to be a judge, and we've got the Mapelli daughters. They will also be judging with Katie. And then we also have Andre Atuchin. And so we got to figure out how to do this online because Andre is on the other side of the world from us. So I'm trying to put that together. So judging might take us a few weeks to get completed, but we're going to let you guys know because there's no way we're not going to share these entries because they're absolutely stunning.
Yeah, we're excited.
All right. Well, you are off to another adventure for a few weeks here. Do you want to talk at all about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to be heading out to southern Utah to Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument in July, so a couple weeks from now, with some students from Colorado State University and with our staff from the lab here. And we're going to be digging on another horned dinosaur. This is a new type of horned dinosaur from southern Utah that's a distant relative of Pops. So this is from rocks that are about 10 million years older than Pops. And this is another completely new, mysterious type of horned dinosaur, and we're hoping to find more of it. So I'll give you some updates from the field down there on some of Pops's great-great-great-grandparents.
We'd love it. And I love how the dinosaur family is growing, not only with people now, but with actual specimens that you're working with out in the field. So we look forward to seeing those updates, and we look forward to talking with you again when you get back.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, safe travels. Thank you so much. And thanks, everyone. If you have any more questions for Dr. Joe, you can always email them to pops@discoverweld.com. Follow us on social media or keep up with us on the website at discoverweld.com and look for the Pops the Triceratops section. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.